Hello, and welcome to Women with AI. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to a Chief AI Officer on Demand who's recently started a newsletter called Women in AI. So I'm super excited to hear all her insights today on what it's like to be a woman working in AI. But before we jump into the podcast, let me tell you a little bit more about her. Verena Weber leverages generative AI in natural language to elevate business competitiveness and navigate its transformative impact. Her varied experience in multiple roles and sectors underpins her ability to extract business value from AI, blending deep technical expertise with strong business acumen. Post-graduation, she consulted in data science at Deloitte and then advanced her skills in natural language programming, deep learning and generative AI as a research scientist for the Alexa team at Amazon. Passionate about gender diversity in tech, Verena coaches women to thrive in this field. Verena Weber, welcome to Women with AI.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Thank you. Perhaps for anyone that's listening that doesn't know you yet, maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey into AI and why you started this really important newsletter.
Yeah, sure. So let me start with my journey into AI. Like you said, my name is Verena. I I've been working in the field for over 7 years now, almost eight. So long before this whole AI hype started, actually. And originally, I was studying statistics, so classical statistics, after graduating from university. And then during my studies, basically, um, did some courses on data science, machine learning, and really like that much better than classical statistics because it was a little bit more like trial and error instead of, in statistics, you have a lot of assumptions, and only if these assumptions hold, then you can really work with the methodologies. Whereas AI is a little bit more, okay, you get the data, you try some things, you see if it works. And that is what I enjoyed more. So I decided to make that a career, and basically started working as a consultant at Deloitte, um, and then switched to some other companies before then joining Amazon as a research scientist for natural language processing. So really specializing in this field of teaching a computer how to understand natural language. And then last year, basically left Amazon and started to be a self-employed consultant for AI. And now I'm really helping companies to navigate this whole AI journey. So from the very beginning of how do we get started, what are potential use cases that make sense for us to use AI for, through to then really implementation.
Cool. Wow. And I know that being a woman in tech, you're obviously passionate about advancing gender diversity in the industry. And so I'm just thrilled that you've decided to support women in tech by sharing your own learnings. And what advice do you give for navigating this it is quite a male dominated environment. So, yeah, what does it feel like?
Exactly. It's quite a male-dominated environment, and that comes with certain challenges. And that also brings me back to that second question that you asked me, or second part of the first question about why I started the newsletter. So basically last year in March, I read a study that blew my mind, right? Did you know that 50% of women leave the tech industry at the midpoint of their career?
Mm,
And they're walking away from everything that they've built and starting over. It's really, really surprising, and I was really baffled, but at the same time I was also a little bit relieved, because it was the sense of, okay, I kind of get it, because as a woman in tech, I could understand this frustration and this exhaustion, right? This
okay. So,
experience of, having to prove yourself over and over again because of your gender, which can be quite exhausting. So
okay.
that is why I decided, okay, I need to do something. I want to create a community. I want women to support each other through this, because also this feeling of isolation and being alone, right? Because oftentimes you don't have a lot of female colleagues, or you don't have any female colleagues at all, really makes it hard. So yeah, now I'm writing this newsletter to share my learnings, to hopefully create a supporting community for other women in tech. And I also coach women and help them stay in the career, but in a way that first makes them feel like they're getting rewarded for their hard work and talent, and
Mm.
second, also in a way that they can prioritize their own well-being.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
because when you first said that stat, I was thinking, oh, you probably mean because they've left to have children or something, and but it's not that. So it's just leaving because they just can't take it anymore. Not in a because it's difficult or hard, but because it is so male dominated and it's so much pressure. That's terrible.
I think
Uh,
there's several levels to it, right? So I think
mm,
one point is they feel like they're not getting ahead, right? They feel like
mm,
their hard work is not being rewarded. They're not getting the promotions that they
yeah.
should. Um, but then also, I think another component is that they're not being supported in delivering um, the best work that they could in a way that works for them,
Mm,
and also so basically not working in a flexible way. So that is then not any longer. So you can basically it's harder. It gets harder to combine your personal life with your career. I
mm,
think that does play a role. And then I think they're just tired of the energy that it takes to really get ahead
yeah.
in this industry sometimes. Yeah.
I think it's a very real issue, and it's not just this industry. I was speaking to a doctor,
Yeah.
Dr.
Can
Sarah
imagine.
Morgan, last well, one of the previous episodes, and she was saying that quite often research papers, in the medical field, if it's what's perceived to be a man's name is on it, is often more well respected, even if it's exactly the same as something that has been written by a woman. And it's just that's what you're up against all the time as a
Exactly.
woman,
Yeah.
in kind of like many industries. So it's
100%. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit soul destroying. So, what are
Yes,
you?
and
Yeah, what?
and
Yeah,
it's very draining. It takes a lot of energy to run against these walls and barriers and misconceptions and judgments and yeah, microaggressions. Yeah, I think yeah, I recently read about a woman and she shared her story about wanting to get her book published and she sent it out to I don't know how many different publishers and never
mhm.
got back a response. And then just for fun, she switched the name to a male name and she got replies with the
Oh,
same with the same manuscript, right?
that's outrageous. I think that's what J.K. Rowling did, isn't it? The author of Harry Potter. She deliberately didn't say that her name was Joanne and just went with the J.K. so that it would get picked up, and no one knew if it was a male or a female author. I mean, because that's all the stuff that I've been learning about. Because I'm new to kind of learning about AI as well, as I think many of my audience probably are as well. And it's that bias, it's that kind of intrinsic bias that's already there that we're sort of fighting against. Because you mentioned about working flexibly and that kind of thing, because obviously some women do have children and decide to kind of put a pause on their careers or do something. And I think a lot of the talk at the moment is, oh, AI just makes it so much easier to work from home, it's going to save time, it's going to do this, that, and the other. But obviously, if you're actually there at the forefront and helping to create AI, you're not getting the support as a woman that you need. So what kind of learnings are you sharing with people? What is your advice?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, these are systemic things, right? That we can only change them gradually and slowly. But there's things that we can do to first take care of ourselves and make sure our energy doesn't get too depleted throughout the process. But then also a little bit learning how the rules work in these male-dominated environments. Because I think one of the main issues that women have, or one of the main problems I see, and it was the same when I started out, right? You come in, you think, okay, you do good work and you get rewarded for it.
Mm,
But that's not how it works. You have to be way more proactive about advocating for yourself, sharing and promoting your achievements, being very persistent in asking for promotions, asking for salary raises, asking for stretch projects. And this may not mean that you say it once. Maybe you just, have to go to your manager's door or whoever it is
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and say it a couple of times. And it's actually interesting, there's these managers who then share the other side of the story where they say, I have men coming into my office almost every day, or
Mhm.
let's say every week, whatever it is,
Yeah.
just asking for that promotion and that salary increase. Whereas women don't show up at all or just show up once, right? And that's
Yeah.
what you're up against. So
Yeah.
you so you have to increase your visibility, and you have to kind of learn these rules that, men, not each and every one, but let's say the
Mhm.
majority, play by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I think it is, it's not, it is a man's world, and we have to become players, and it's not like, well, we can still retain our femininity and be female about it. But you're right. I think we need to just be reminded that that isn't how you get ahead, because I've done it in jobs as well. And I've seen other female colleagues do it, where you sit and you do the work. You think, well, someone will recognize it. Surely they'll just know that I'm amazing and that I deserve this promotion. But no, you're right. You have to have the balls to go up and like knock on that door and say, can I have a few moments of your time? And then you have to, even if you write it down and practice it. And I've done that in like my first role. I remember it was a sales role, and it was very male dominated, and I realized pretty quickly that if I wanted to sort of play with all the big boys, I would have to go and say, can I have a pay rise? I feel like I should be remunerated for all the work I'm doing. And I think it's brilliant that you're doing this newsletter to inspire women, because it's something that isn't taught.
Yeah. And the other thing is, right, women on average tend to be less confident,
Mhm.
and they tend to be, yeah, less confident in their abilities, but then also in their achievements, right? I think
Yeah.
what I've seen a lot is that men achieve something, they do something, and they're like overly, or they're very proud of what they did, and they maybe even inflate the impact that
Mhm.
it had, or they go around talking about the impact all the time, maybe even organically, naturally. But then
Yeah.
women, they don't, sometimes even downplay their achievements, right?
Yeah.
This
I
is,
think,
yeah,
yeah, we're told to don't show off, don't,
exactly, yeah.
yeah, don't stand out, just be quiet.
Exactly, exactly. And there's this, I mean, Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In says, like,
Mm.
for men, actually success and popularity are positively correlated, whereas for
Yeah.
women it's negatively correlated. So I think women have to understand or overcome this kind of maybe fear that being successful might mean they're not being liked,
Mhm.
or yeah, exactly, this kind of, they're taught to be quiet and not stand out. And this, yeah, you basically have to lose those behavioral patterns and adopt new ones.
Yeah, because I've seen it as well. I've talked with friends, about applying for jobs and this kind of thing, and I think it is I don't know if it's a stat or if I'm making it up, but say there's a job description and there's 5 things that you need to be good at, and a man, I'm just saying, totally generalizing, but most men, or would look and go, "Wow, I can do 2 of those things. I'm going to apply." Whereas a woman would be like, "Oh my God, well I can only do like 4.5 of those. I don't, I probably better not apply until I can do all of them." And I think it was you. I heard you talk about as a quote that you had. Uh,
Yeah, I think that what you meant was this also from Sheryl Sandberg, right? That
yes.
men are promoted based on potential,
Hmm.
whereas women are promoted based on achievements.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So it's almost like we have to prove ourselves first before we'll
Exactly.
be recognized. And then someone will probably still say, or did you really do that yourself? And we have to start standing up for
Exactly.
ourselves, say yes.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, this is tiring because you have to do it over and over again. And
Yeah.
I think there was, I don't know if who said it or if it's an actual quote, but like this saying of, men are assumed to be competent and women have
Mm.
to prove that they're
Yeah.
competent.
Again. It- yeah. This is what we're up against. I read something as well. It was about, and when uh what was it? It was in America, running for president, and it's oh my goodness, what's her name? It's completely gone out of my mind. The wife of the ex-president. Who is it that was up against?
You mean
Uh,
Hillary Clinton?
who is it? Sorry,
Hillary Clinton?
Hillary Clinton. That's it. Oh my goodness, yeah, Hillary Clinton. And they were saying, wow, she's very ambitious, isn't she?
Yeah.
You know, like wanting to be president. And it's like, well, yes, like if you want to be president,
You have
you
to be.
need to be ambitious. So why is that a bad thing for a woman to be
Yeah.
when, yeah, it's fine for Trump to be ambitious, to want to be president, but oh, no, 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 a woman can't be ambitious. She just, yeah, she
And
should
and
already have, yeah.
and I think it's very helpful to be aware of these prejudices and unconscious biases that you're up against, right? Because I
Mm,
mean, if you know that people don't necessarily associate you with competence, being competent or whatever, right? Then you even need to be more proactive to show that
yeah,
you're competent.
yeah,
Mm.
definitely. So this is where your coaching comes in, I'm guessing. And do you do, is it one-to-one coaching, or do you do sort of groups
Exactly.
of women? How does it work?
It's one-to-one coaching and it
Mm,
has, well, I mean, one of it is definitely being more strategic about your career growth and um, how do you make sure that you're getting the visibility that you need. Um, but it and what are ways of communicating that feel natural to me and don't necessarily feel like, "Oh, I'm being really inauthentic here," but still making sure that you're communicating your value and where you're adding value.
mm,
But then it also looks at your habits and routines. So basically supporting you through your normal work days, making sure you're not overextending yourself, making sure
mm,
you can keep um, your energy up because it is sometimes very depleting to fight against these prejudices. And what I see is that often women, because they're up against this, right, and they start to overextend themselves. And then they become burnt out or their energy gets really depleted. And I mean, what I always say is you have to think about it in the long run, right? Maybe you can do
mm,
this for a certain period of time, but it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we also look at habits and routines that support you throughout your entire career, and also do some work with the body and the breath, because I think also limiting beliefs is something that women often, yeah,
mm,
well, are very much ingrained in them, right? And imposter syndrome and all these things. And I totally, I mean, I was there too. And I think one thing is understanding it on a mental level, right? That identifying those beliefs and
yeah,
also and understanding imposter syndrome. But then to really overcome it, or at least, I mean, at least improve it, right? You need to be able to feel it in your body. You need to embody this new confidence. You need to embody a new belief, and it's not just a mental thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think there was a course that was run at one of my uh, companies I work for, and it was about sort of women, empowering women in business. And one of the things they said was about the superhero stance, or like that
Hmm.
kind of like standing with your hands, on your hips and kind of just really kind of, believing in it. So yeah, I totally 100% agree that it's the whole body and mind ethos that we need to embrace. I mean, because a lot of the sort of chat around it is, oh, we need to get women into STEM and we need to get women into tech and get women into AI. But I think it's really interesting that you're saying, and I'm hearing this, that there are a lot of women in it, but you're right, it's the retaining them. And I have
Yeah.
until now thought that everyone's just leaving because they're having kids, not just because they're like, oh my God, I can't. This is
I
why we
mean,
need
yeah.
more women so we can all support each other. And
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not saying, I think some women leave because they're having kids and they feel like, okay, I can't sustain this level of commitment and energy that it takes to put into the job while raising a family, or I'm not giving the flexibility that I need, right?
Mhm.
To work and have a family. But I yeah, it's not the only level that is to that. There's definitely a disillusionment that
Mhm.
happens at some point.
Yeah. So, and because I'm just thinking back to when you said you were looking at statistics and that kind of thing, because it's that sort of data, and isn't it? I mean, data, it's only as good as what you've put in and what you get out, but it's kind of that is what is progressing all the bias that already exists in AI because of the kind of lack of data that even involves women. That's the other thing that I'm finding, that women haven't been involved in medical studies, or that if it is men, that are at the top of the tree. I mean, it's like when the Apple Watch was first released and it was, you know, the big demonstration and the big reveal, and it measures everything about your body. It mentions your heart rate and you know, like how many times you breathe or take a breath, you know, when you're asleep, when you're awake, and all these things. And it's amazing. It'll track you when you're running and all this. And then a woman in the audience said, "Oh, does it track your menstrual cycle?" And they're like, "Oh, no, didn't think about that." And it's like, what? It's like, you're not just
Yeah.
selling it to men, you're saying it tracks everything, but it doesn't. So it's kind of like, we need women to stay in tech and stay at the top, or get to the top and be the decision
Yeah,
makers.
exactly. So and we have this everywhere, right? I mean, I just recently learned that those devices, apparently how they calculate their heart rate variability is
Mm.
something that is different for women, but they just use the algorithm for men.
Yeah.
And it will be the same thing with AI, right? If we
Yeah.
don't have women at the forefront helping to develop these technologies, then we again will be left out of the picture. And already now I can see how women are far more likely to engage in, discussions about ethical requirements or bias, or you
Hmm.
know also looking at this bigger picture of society. Usually if you look at AI governance researchers, you find more females there, right? So I think women often take very different and important aspects into account that
Hmm.
men don't necessarily think about. Um, so it's really, it's not only a nice to have to have women in there. It's really essential to not perpetuate this, even further perpetuate
Yeah.
this bias.
Because I read something about it as women in politics, and it was saying how you need to have an equal mix, because yeah, when there aren't as many women involved, then things like funding for childcare and education and health goes down, because the male politicians or whoever's in charge aren't thinking about those things. So you need to have a kind of like a 50-50 split, because as soon as you know, the statistics are there. I don't know, I'll try and find some links, put them in the show notes if I can find them. But when the women are back up and it's more of level, then the kind of spending is more equal and more things get considered, because there are things that just naturally, you know, do fall into sort of like, not a remit, but kind of what people feel they're more responsible for. um, and also, and I think what you're saying about standing up for ourselves and actually talking about it and making a change. I mean, this is something else. I was with my sister the other day and my brother-in-law. We'd gone to an event and we thought, right, let's all go to the toilet. And so of course my brother-in-law was in and out, me and my sister waiting. The queue is so long. And I said, this is another thing that we don't complain about, or we don't talk about. We just put up with the fact that, oh, they've decided that you should have an equal amount of cubicle, or an
Hmm.
equal amount of space for male and female toilets, but women take longer and we go in a cubicle. We can't stand up, so we need more space, we need more cubicles, but we just wait. Like, why isn't there a big campaign? I mean, maybe there is. If there is, someone tell me. I'm going to sign it. But that, you know, all these planning officers, and whether they're, you know, I'm betting they're probably male, thinking, oh, we'll just make it equal. No, like, equal, it doesn't necessarily mean fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you know, why do we, but we just put up with it because we're used to it. So, oh well, that always, you know, we always have to queue. And it's just like, well, there must be something that someone can do, or the next time someone, you know, builds a
Yeah,
shopping mall,
I
please put in
think,
more ladies toilets.
yeah, and that's the next thing, right? I think women are socialized not to really express their needs and be
Mm,
very vocal about what they need. And that's something we have to learn. Um,
yeah. Not to
yeah.
complain. Yeah, we need to complain. We're told not to, but we need to start
Yeah, and I
complaining.
mean, maybe not complain,
Yeah, that's
because
the wrong
complain is
word.
like the
Yeah.
negative connotated word, but just be vocal about what we need and stand up for it. Because,
Yeah.
like you said, I'm not saying there's bad intention, right?
No.
It's just guys, men, whoever, they're not aware, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly. Why
also,
would they be? Yeah.
exactly. I mean, one thing that I've also, kind of read about in the last couple of weeks is like how you can sync your work with your cycle.
Yeah.
And, and that's not something men are aware about, right? And I even wasn't until very recently, because it's not something that gets talked about that much, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really just a lack of awareness and not necessarily bad intent. So we just need to create that awareness and stand up for what we need.
Hmm.
And then I'm sure there's a lot of men and allies who are willing to help. Yeah.
Definitely, I hope they are. Hopefully they're listening to this. And I wondered, have you got any advice about using AI tools? I mean, something like ChatGPT, for
Hmm.
instance, because that's one of the examples that, like we were saying about if you know have a male name or a female name, it reacts differently, but only because it's going on all the data that's been fed into it already. So how do you yeah, do you have any advice for using tools
Hmm.
like that?
Yes, I mean, in general, it's just being aware that those models have bias and then thinking about how you can make sure that you get the most, let's say, unbiased view out of it. So this can be, for example, being very specific in the prompt, saying, instead of saying, give me the advantages of X over Y, just say, give me pros and cons for X and Y. So
Mm.
already encouraging this unbiased view when you prompt. And then, of course, also looking at the output and checking, okay, does this sound unbiased? Is there maybe a perspective missing? And if so, you can just specifically ask for that perspective again. Or if you feel like you're not getting an unbiased answer, just use Google, use other sources. And I think the key point really is not just blindly relying on AI, but really using it with caution and using it as something that you still need to question.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And that's something that I hadn't ever really thought about because I use ChatGPT and I use it and I ask it questions, I help it to do things, and quite often I'll think, oh no, that isn't right, but I probably not giving it the feedback that I have. So sometimes do like the
Yeah,
thumbs up or the thumbs down, or I say, well, actually, can you rewrite it again? Can you make it a little bit more this or that? So I guess that's probably a really important
exactly.
takeaway.
And really give it feedback, like very
Yeah,
specific feedback. Like, I think this point here is not fair or unbiased. Could you elaborate on it again, taking this and this into account? Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a really yeah. I'm going to start doing that.
So it's you can treat it like a human basically and really
Yeah.
giving it feedback in that regard.
Exactly, because it's almost like I've had people say on the show before, it's like having an intern. It's just like having an intern. You know,
Yeah,
they do it, it's
exactly.
not quite right, so then you take it and you do it yourself. But I think the trouble is you take it and you do it yourself in a Word document, or you do it, somewhere else, and you're not actually going, oh, actually, maybe we need to go back and go, well, actually, this was the final article, or this was the finished
Yeah. But I mean, even
post.
for the intern, right? It would be so much better for the
Yeah,
intern if you gave him or her feedback so they could improve.
yeah.
And
Oh
it's the
my
same
god,
for the model, right?
that is so helpful. I never even thought about that before. Oh yes, I was just thinking. So like we were about being like masculine and feminine, or like being more this or more that, and I think I know that we have spoken before about Mo Gawdat, and we both
Yeah.
had read the book Scary Smart, because he talks a lot about empowering women to become more masculine, but also encouraging men to embrace their feminine ways. So I mean, do you think that is that something that's possible? How can we do that?
Yeah, I think that's something that's necessary. I think was what he also says is we're living in a world of hyper masculinity. So that means we're putting too much importance on the masculine qualities, right? Those are basically logic, analytical thinking, um, planning, being strategic, whereas we're completely devaluing and neglecting the feminine qualities like intuition, creativity, and just being. It's always just doing, which is masculine.
Mm,
And what he says, right? I mean, feminine and masculine qualities are independent of gender. Each of us
mm,
has both. And he says, and I totally agree, right? We need more feminine qualities in this world. And what we do right now is by empowering women is like teaching them how to be more in their masculine.
mm,
And I think that is also, I can imagine, one of the reasons why some women leave, because it becomes inauthentic at some point, right? You're trying to be someone you are not, and you're getting out of balance. And he rightly says that we do need more intuition. We need more feminine leadership, right? We need to be and not just do. We need to think about the consequences of our actions, about also ethical and societal consequences, and not just do and do and do, and basically just
No.
see profits, or whatever it may be. And I think that is a very important point. And when I heard him say that, it it described very well of how I felt. And I could definitely also see that imbalance in me, right? That you're being in this male dominated environment, basically, uh, success is equated with being masculine. And
Yeah.
you get out of balance over time, and that's really draining. And it's also not what the world needs right now. We need some counterbalance to that. And I like that actually now when we look at new leadership, right? It's a lot about emotional intelligence,
Mm,
empathy. How do you deal with emotions at work? And this is exactly, being more in your feminine qualities.
yeah, definitely. It's yeah, it's being able to to see what and say. So it's not, you don't have to act like a man, as you say. It's just like embracing the more masculine side of actually pushing yourself forward and asking for that promotion and asking for that pay rise. And
Yes, but at the same time, also making sure that you can bring your feminine qualities to
yeah,
work, and basically see that difference as a strength, and find an environment where this kind of being different or approaching things differently is being seen as a strength instead of
yeah,
a weakness. And that's not something only for women, right? Even men suffer from that. Like, I
yeah,
think there's a lot of men out there who'd like to be a little bit more feminine, and who are suffering from this hyper masculinity too.
yeah. But they
It's not
feel that that's how they have to behave instead of being more nurturing. It's yeah.
exactly. And I do a lot of yoga. I love yoga. And I went to an event last weekend, and it was men and women, and then we had like a men's circle and a women's circle. And it was really interesting to see how many men were really relieved that they finally found other men to talk about their feelings with.
Mhm.
Because that's not what men usually do, or what every man is open with, right? Open to do. So I think for them, it's also not easy. Yeah.
It's nice because I go to a dance class and there's three guys in it. And I had a male friend who went, "Oh, you do the dance class? Oh, but there's no men." I was like, "Well, actually, no, there are. There's three." And one of the guys actually like takes the class sometimes. He's actually done the course to do it. And it's like, you should come along. And then a few more men have joined. And you're right, they seem to love it. It's yeah, it's a
Yeah.
freestyle. It sounds like a bit crazy, but it's like you're just dancing to pop music. But it's a really fun class, and it is nice to see that trying to get more of an equal mix. And
Yeah,
a
and
friend,
they also get a lot out of
yeah,
it, right? And
yeah.
sometimes if there's only women, then they feel uncomfortable to join. And yeah.
Yeah, that one is a mix. And a friend reminded me the other day that he said he'd listened to one of my previous podcasts. And he said, "Oh, it was a really good point you made about trying to be a mother to AI instead of a father." Because you're right, sometimes it's, the kind of father figure is like pushing and pushing and pushing. I mean, this is totally
Hmm.
generalizing, but it's the mum that's giving a hug, and it's the mum that's like saying, "Well, no, come on, pick yourself up and you can do it again." And I think that's what we need to do with AI, isn't it, really? Just we need to
Exactly.
make sure we're giving it equal kind of love.
Yeah.
From both genders. Uh,
Yeah, and both qualities, right? I mean, it could also be a man who's very much in his feminine qualities, right? But
mm,
that, is probably even more an outlier than a woman in the field. So, so
yeah. Oh. So, what do you think the future of AI holds? Does it excite or
yeah.
scare you?
Well, I'm rather optimistic, simply because probably I also see a lot of limitations still, right? I mean, I see that it can feel really scary if you also, I mean, all of a sudden these AI models happen and you haven't really been following the development. I mean, of course, I see that the development is exponential, and the progress that we're making is exponential. So it's also very hard to predict, because it could probably in 10 years time it's already very different. Um, but I'm rather excited. I'm rather optimistic, because at the end of the day, it's a technology, and like everything, it depends how you use it. Um, and well, I just hope it can it can automate a lot of boring tasks. I just hope, I can get an AI assistant
Yeah.
that does that's like having a personal assistant, but something that everyone can afford.
Yeah, it definitely frees up our time to do all the other stuff.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Oh, Verena, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you and have you here today. Where can everyone needs to subscribe to your newsletter for a start? So we'll put the link in the newsletter. But is that, yeah, where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, the newsletter for sure, and then you can find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I also have a website in case you're interested to check out what I do.
Brilliant. Verena Weber, thank you so much for coming on Women with AI.
Thank you, Joe. It was a pleasure. It was really fun.